Hi, my name Sander. I am doing a did you ask?
Hey, my name's Moira Woods, Mrs. Woods. I was the resource teacher at Hazel M. Kellington School when Sander first came in grade 3 from the Philippines, and I was actually his grade 3 social studies teacher too. And we were so excited to have a student who was coming to us from the Philippines always, and he was profoundly deaf, so we knew he would need an interpreter, and the school division hired Kyla to be his interpreter, and she received some training. We all received some training, and then when Sander came to grade 5, I came over here to be the resource teacher at Neepawa Middle School, and so I've been Sander's case manager ever since he came to Canada. And so as the resource teacher and his case manager, I just looked after making sure we had adaptations in place for Sander each year as he was going through the grades, and that we were working on his literacy skills, because that's always a struggle with a student who is hearing disabled. They have to be taught how to read explicitly. But as I was saying, he was always such a good student. He came in very aware of what other kids were doing and always trying to do his work and copying information off the board. And it's just so lovely to see how far he has come.
I'm Sylvie Domenico, and I'm a grade 5 teacher at Neepawa Middle School. And I had the pleasure of having Sander in my class in his first year in the Neepawa Middle School. And Sander and I were learning ASL together. He knew some, I knew some, and we were communicating quite a bit together in ASL. I had not taken a formal course in it. I had attended an online workshop. I knew that Sander was coming in, but for the past 5 or 6 years prior, I had been using ASL in my French classes. So as a French teacher, as a language teacher, I had a strategy that I had adopted and just tweaked a little bit, where we were learning language through story and using gestures to be able to teach the language. And what I decided, there were gestures that came with this program, but I decided that it would be better, why not, if we are learning gestures, let's just learn the actual ASL word, what it is. So I would be teaching the students, for instance, I want an apple. So I would be doing I want an apple, which is signing. It's not exactly the right order, because in ASL, the order is different, but the vocabulary is very similar. So the grade 5s and I, so it was all the grade 5s, because I was teaching French to everyone, along with my colleagues. We had probably over 100 kids that went through the grade 5 French program that all learned, I would say, a couple of thousand words of sign, just learning it through our French classes and learning it through songs and gestures and with Sander's help. And it was a wonderful experience. And it was very, I find when students use gestures and when Sander does that, there's something in our brains, there was no translation. So there's something in our brain that is sticking with us. So we're understanding those gestures just because we draw it out of our body. So that's something I did with Sander, and I'm really happy to say a lot of the students know a lot of sign. They might think, oh, I forget, but actually they wouldn't. I could go to students 3 or 4 years that I had, 3 or 4 years ago, and they'd still be able to draw those words and those signs, which is great.
Hi, I am Ms. Freeman. I teach grade 6 at NMS, and I had Sandra in my class 2 years ago. When I first heard that Sandra was going to be coming into grade 6, it was actually asked if anybody in particular would like to have Sandra in the class, and I volunteered because I was super excited to have a challenge. And I learned a little bit of ASL when I was a kid, but I hadn't really remembered much, and I thought that it sounded like it'd be a super fun challenge to have him. So yeah, I was very excited to have him in my classroom. Yeah, I got a lot of materials from the resource department, so they had given me, the different letters of the alphabet and what sign goes through with them. And then I had gone and found some other materials too, so like the numbers for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we would have that as a visual schedule. And so it'd be like first period would be this, but then it'd have the symbol for 1, and then the symbol for the month or the date and stuff like that. And then the kids were able to use that when they would go through the schedule every day. So all the kids in the classroom actually learned ASL along with having Sandra in the classroom. It was really good. So they learned, to incorporate sign language wherever we could.
My name is Kyla DeWitt, and I am an educational assistant with the Beautiful Plains School Division, and I work with Sander. I have worked with Sander since he got here, so the end of his 3rd grade. I've moved from HMK over to Neepawa Middle School with him, and I will continue on with him here into high school as long as he is in our division. I was very nervous when he was coming into 3rd grade because I had no prior knowledge of anything ASL. We weren't sure what we were going to do with him until we really met him. We didn't know how good his English was or if he was doing like a Filipino sign language, so we were very nervous. And then we met him, and I applied and took on the position to work with him, and through taking some more ASL courses for him and we have been able to get through this together, and I'm much less nervous about it now. Sander is a smart boy. He's super easy to work with. We've learned both together more and more ASL. There's been lots of things we incorporate in the classroom, like using iPad for images if we don't understand. We're both looking up signs together using our various websites that we use for sign language. Sander has meetings with a fellow from the deaf of hard of hearing community named Cody, and that really helps us all. And we have the resource teacher, Mrs. Woods, who's been very helpful with getting us things to work with, and his teachers incorporating sign into the classroom has been very helpful as well.
So we got the idea for Tiger TV in grade 6, and for Sander, being able to do signs with Sander. And it was pretty exciting because I had Mrs. DeWitt in the class and Mrs. Rogers as well. And Tiger TV was kind of relatively new at that time too. And we thought what a great platform to have Sander be able to be not just a participant in the school, but a leader, right? And I'm sorry I got choked up because it was very exciting to see him start off with the very basic signs and to see where he is now. And it's so fun to see the growth that has occurred with him and the confidence, right? So what had happened with the start of this was Mrs. DeWitt and I were talking, and I like to come up with ideas for stuff, and between the two of us, we thought that would be a great segment for the whole school to be able to learn some basic signing, so that when they saw Sandra in the hallway, they could say, hi, how are you, and stuff. And it's just like, that was the first step, and they've just like taken it so far over the last few years.
So
yes.
In the middle school.
Yep. So Tiger TV is a show that happened. It started off once a week on Fridays, especially during COVID, and great platform to see what's happening in the school. And so for Tiger TV, we thought that's a great place, because they used to do we would do Tiger Talents is one of the things that it started off with, is where kids could show their talent. So that was kind of an idea. It was like, oh, this is a great talent that Sander has, right? And yeah, so that was kind of how it began.
Now it's time for some Science with Sander. Although it was too bad we didn't have one last week, but it's fine because we have it this week. Roll the clip.
Science with Sander. Hello, my name is Sander. Today we will practice the signs we learned. Jude, do you remember the sign for hello? Do you remember goodbye? Do you remember how are you?
Chloe, do you remember the signs for please? Do you remember thank you? Do you remember for you're welcome?
Martin, do you remember the sign for school? Do you remember the sign for teacher? Do you remember the sign for class?
Amaya, do you remember the sign for Halloween? Do you remember the sign for pumpkin? Do you remember costume? Good job. See you next week.
Hey, we're doing really well with sign language.
I agree. And it's nice having Sander here. He can teach us how to do sign language.
With the idea, it was Joanne Freeman that came up with the idea. We had a little segment called Tiger TV that airs every 2 weeks in our school, and it's just like a little news, like recaps the couple weeks. They were looking for new segments, I would say when he was in grade 6. So Joanne Freeman, who is very passionate about sign language and ASL, said, why don't we try to do something with signing? And I kind of took it on from there. So what we would do is, it's always very easy to find volunteers to help us. So I wrote up a little script for him to read, and his volunteer friend, which changes every week, would read out the script while he would sign. And then we would teach the school a new word or a new phrase to practice, and they would get to practice, and yeah, that's how it kind of got started. And we go through all grades, all volunteers from grade 5 right up to grade 8.
Signs with Sander.
Hello, my name is Sander.
This is my friend Rain. Today I'll be teaching you ASL signing. Today's topic is the spring dance. Today's signs are come to the spring dance on Thursday. Now you try. Come to the spring dance on Thursday. Great work. See you in 2 weeks.
And then there was always like a script that was followed, like introducing the student and where Sandra would introduce the student, and then they would say who they were, and then they would say like the 3 words for that week. So it started off with Mrs. DeWitt always was the one that was recording, and she's the one that they would pick like what words were said. So like Mrs. DeWitt has done the majority, like all the work for this over time, and then they would choose what student would be the one to partner with them on Tiger TV.
So how was the response of the students who were involved?
Oh, the response for the students has been awesome, because usually, you know, it would be students that would be so excited to do this with Sander. And when it first started, it would be the kids that probably were the most comfortable and had been around Sander a lot were the ones that first did it. And now it's just a variety of students that help out with that, which is just great.
And how about the other grade levels who were watching?
Yeah.
Hear any response from them?
Yeah, the cool thing about Signs with Sander is how it's evolved. So like when it started off, you know, you would hear, you could only really notice what was happening in your own classroom, because that's where you watch Tiger TV. So then like I just thought our class was like super into it, but then when you would go to see kids in the hallway and seeing kids sign and stuff is pretty cool. But then now 2 years later, when that segment comes on, everybody starts singing, you know, Signs with Sander, you know, and they're able to do like the intro, and they just naturally do it in the classroom. Like I don't even think that they notice that they're doing it now, but they get very excited. And this is, you know, the first year, the second year, and then this year as well.
So do you think this kind of program like improved Sander's relationship with the other students or other grade levels as well?
Yes, I think Sander's relationships built naturally, probably because of this, because he was so very shy when he was in grade 6 with me, and I'm sure it was the same in grade 5 as well, that, you know, the confidence of him being able to be seen in the school.
Okay, hello Neepawa. My name is Miss Seawick. I'm a grade 8 teacher here at Neepawa Middle School. I'm here to talk about a unique student I have in my classroom named Sander. Okay, so I knew about Sander's hearing impairment for many years because he has been part of Tiger TV, and so early on when we had the Signs with Sander segment, even when I taught grade 7, we watched and we followed along and we learned the signs. So I knew when he was coming to grade 8 that, you know, he could potentially be in my class. And so when I found out he would be in my class, I was just overjoyed. I speak French and English, and so I really was excited to learn potentially another language, the other language being ASL. I really didn't know any signs at all. I didn't know the alphabet or the finger spelling or anything. And really to prepare before, you know, in the summertime before September, I printed off the alphabet and I printed off a little number chart, and I kind of glued both by my desk. And then really on day 1, I tried to incorporate it as much as I could in the classroom. So it didn't take me too long to kind of catch on to the alphabet. And then I had a lot of the students doing the same, and we would learn to finger spell our names. And then it got to a point that because Miss DeWitt, who happens to work with Sander quite closely, and even through the summer, she was able to kind of fill in my gaps every time that I had a question of a sign or something to say to him. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey since September. I feel like if I ever ran into somebody on the street who was hearing impaired and used ASL, I probably could get, you know, something very basic through to them. I feel like I've learned a lot of interesting signs that are very maybe more specialized to the classroom. So often I'll say to Sander, you know, math, test, tomorrow, or sign, mother, and I have different signs for that. I mean, I've learned his sign, I've tried to create my own. I always try my best to kind of make up signs when I can't, because sometimes they're really, really obvious, but then afterwards we'll always look them up online and kind of go with that. Is that okay?
Signs with Sander. Hello, my name is Sander. This is my friend, Miss Seawick. Today, I will be teaching you ASL signing. Today's topic is teacher feature. The sign is Sander is on fire. Now you try. Sander is on fire. Good work. See you next week.
Introduce yourself there.
Hi, my name is Mrs. Rogers. I work as an EA at Neepawa Middle School. Our role as an EA is to assist students in the class, to just help them achieve as much as they can through either individual work or group work. My role with Xander, who's our hard of hearing student, would be to basically help him with signs and just assist him to get as much out of the work we're trying to do in class. So when I first started working with Xander, he would have came here in grade 5, and Miss Tomniko was his teacher. So we would basically use a microphone to try and have each student project their voice as loud as possible for Xander to hear. Then obviously as an EA helping him along those ways, I would look up signs because we were, myself and Mrs. DeWitt would have been learning sign language as well, and Xander too. So when we first started our ASL learning signs, that was all through Zoom courses. It started, I believe, in 2020. When COVID hit, I was asked if I would be interested to learn sign language to help Xander. So obviously I thought, yeah, I'd be happy to try and learn a new language. I will be honest, it was difficult, but to see the reward for Xander to understand what you're talking about when you're assigning things to him, it was very heartwarming. And also with the students in general in the classrooms, we would have everyone try to learn sign language to help speak, just to communicate with him, just the basics. Hello, my name is, math, science, just the different subjects we were using as well. And also, I guess, just in general terms, during class time, whatever subject we would do, Xander was always very, just like all the other students, eager to learn, very smart. And I would never say his his hard of hearing would have made him any different than any other student. Just the hard thing, obviously, was the communication. So to see all the kids and the teachers push for everyone to try and learn that sign language to help him communicate. And even as we go through the corridors, not even in class time, like all the different students from the different grades would help out as well. Just by just a basic hi, my name, and just hand spelling. Everything was hand spelling for all of us at first. But as we progressed from beginner 1 to beginner 2, which were courses that we would have taken during our summer breaks, for a week over Zoom, and then at the end of that week we would just have a test as well, just to make sure that we were learning as much as we possibly could to help Xander. And then we went on and we took intermediate 1 and then on to intermediate 2. So yeah, it's been quite the learning challenge, but I would say when we talk about where Xander has come from, like basic with ASL to where he is right now, I would say I'm so proud of how hard he has worked. And in general, in the classrooms as well, like every teacher he's gone through from grade 5 up to grade 8, they have put 100% into wanting to learn ASL and to have their students as a group in the rooms learn as well. And he's always smiling, like no matter when we think, oh, you know, we all have to look up a different sign, and as soon as one knows it, then another student would ask me, how do you sign this? How do you sign that? And if we don't know, we just look it up. And honestly, sometimes Xander would even know it before we do. That's how smart he is.
Hello, my name is Princess. Hi, my name is Vaishvi. We are Sander's classmate.
So, how do you feel having a deaf classmate in your classroom?
It feels like a normal experience with all of the other classmates, with all around us, and he's like just our classmate.
Yeah, and he also helped us to learn new skills in ASL and yeah.
So how do you interact with him?
Well, when
or communicate with him?
Well, my first communication was like in grade 4, and then we also for like the ASL club, and then we also had Miss Sewick also told us to ASL do ASL for math.
So how's the interaction like? If you don't, the first time maybe you don't know how to use, you don't know ASL, like no knowledge about ASL. So how do you communicate with him? Do you use gestures? How does it work?
Yeah, we search it up. We search it up that word on Google, and then it shows that, and then he makes us feel like, yeah, we learned something new from him. So it's nice. Yeah.
So you use the written, like write it down or search it on like a picture in the.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So are you learning ASL as part of the class or?
Yeah, we are learning ASL as a part of our class. If we see something, for example, we were learning about square roots and perfect square and those kind of things. So we were so curious to know about which kinds of ASL is he using and how does he learning about ASL. And then we were search it up, and he helped us to do that, and then now we know how to ASL. Yeah, how to sign it.
You were the ones who were part of the ASL club before. What grade was that?
I think it was grade 4 or 3 somewhere.
So how do you do the is that a regular?
Well, I think it was during lunch hour, and then yeah.
And someone was teaching you how to do ASL. Okay. So how was it like learning a new language?
Is this a daily thing or just once a week?
I don't really remember because it was a long time ago, but I think it was a few days, like every few days, I think, or just every day.
How about Tiger TV? Were you part of that? The Science with Sanders, the Science with Sanders
Well,
program?
we didn't get to because we didn't really get asked. So then we usually just do it on Tiger TV when it shows up on the TV.
Yes.
We usually just sign it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Science with Standard like helped you also to learn sign language.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good thing. Yeah.
Did you find it a challenge initially to learn it?
Not really, because we usually do it like most of the time. But for sometimes we usually forget some.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to learn it because we messed up with words, like yesterday is kind of the same as tomorrow and those kinds of things. So it's kind of messed up, and we are so appreciate with him that he learned it in one year. Like when he look at that Google sign, and then he just learned it. So we are so appreciate with him because it's kind of hard to remember it. Yeah, that's why.
So what are your learning or realizations based on this experience having a deaf classmate?
Well, there's not much realization. It's just that it's just having like a classmate with us, like a normal classmate with us. So we usually
Like you see him as just the same with your other
Yeah, same as us.
So, How about you?
Yeah, it's same as us. Like he's similar to us. So yeah.
Did you do an extra effort in order to interact or communicate with him?
Not really, but sometimes we does.
Like the whole class.
Like what efforts do you
use? Okay, so it's kind of hard to remember signs. So like whenever we introduce to him or something we were talking about, we have to look for words. Yeah, that's how, like alphabets and how to sign it. We have to look for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Otherwise, he's similar to us, so we don't care.
We've learned just recently that he's learning how to speak.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
It was surprising, and all of us were so happy to hear his voice.
Yes.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the day, we would use a daily schedule, a visual daily schedule, and each kid would use signing for the schedule. So they would go like MAY for May, and if it was like the 3rd or whatever. And so they would do that every day. And then so for social studies, they would go, you know, do the sign for social, or if it was math, they would use math. Some kids were better at it than others, but it was every day that we would do that. And that was probably the thing that was the most standard practice in the classroom.
Yeah, all the students are eager and excited to learn ASL any opportunity. I've tried to incorporate it, you know, in my math lessons and in my social studies lessons, and anywhere where we can, it'll help all learners to pair different concepts that we're learning in class with some kind of movement, and in this case, another language. So that always works. I love that even though we're in a classroom atmosphere, a lot of the students still want to interact with Sander in, you know, in a childish way, which I think is so like amazing. Like it was early on this semester, we had someone visit from the Deaf and Hearing Society, and you know, the kids really wanted, you know, like a term for fart or something, and then they would learn it, and then they would say that to him, and he would laugh, and they would laugh, and it was kind of like all funny that they were learning things kind of together and really acting as kids do. And yeah, the hearing impairment really doesn't affect it. So at times I feel like, you know, there's a lot of people talking, and it can probably be very overwhelming for him because there's a lot going on around him and not a lot going on. But then when you remind students really quickly, like, hey, include Sander in that conversation, they're so natural about it. And yeah, they always take it in a funny direction, and they're just amazing. We're so fortunate here to have such amazing students.
Let's just talk about other activities like sports, for instance, and any other extracurricular activities.
Okay, so the only sport that I can speak towards, I did supervise the House League volleyball that took place after school in the fall, and Sander came out and played volleyball, and at the time, I mean, it wasn't this fall, but it was last fall, I didn't know any ASL, and so there was often times where I was reffing a volleyball game, and I kind of thought, oh, you know, like he'll want to know what's going on, because I'm not sure if he can hear the whistle, or, you know, what's going on, or the chatter amongst the people in his team. And so there was actually another student who I would rely on heavily, and I would say, hey, can you go over to Sander and can you make sure he knows what's going on, that you guys are rotating, that you know that everyone's going to go through, and then someone's going to take a break, and then he'll come back on. And yeah, I mean, that was really great. We're really fortunate that we have wonderful teachers who encourage students to be really amazing as far as learning ASL and helping them out, but also the students take it upon themselves to help out whenever they can. They realize that certain sports are difficult if you are hearing impaired, and so they fill that gap. And yeah, it makes it really easy as a teacher, as a referee, or as a supervisor, or anything like that, when Sander's there, because the kids are so good.
Okay.
How about with the extracurricular activities? How is he able to adopt to the...
So really, he's been coming to things like badminton. I think he did some basketball. He pretty much comes and just hangs out with the teachers here, and whomever is doing the volunteering will do the best they can, but once he sees what's going on, he's a very natural athlete, so he picks up things super easily. Things outside of school, like the garden club, I go with him to that just to be a signer. If we do anything with like the art gallery or his art class, he always has either me or Mrs. Rogers with him to go and sign as well.
As far as a general deaf student, we had a lot of conversation about that because this is the first deaf student that I ever had in my classroom, so it was new for me. And I think the struggle was to find materials for him to be able to read and write and do all those kinds of things in a way that made sense for him. And I'm still kind of unsure of what that would look like for if I had another deaf student in the classroom, what those materials would be like. Yeah, so with his EA that was with him all the time, she would always, translate and stuff and would do a wonderful job, but it would be nice to have some more resources, especially for, reading, writing, math, especially, yeah.
Just having more visual stuff to help him as well. Well, I find as an EA working with him, when I work through science and social studies in grade 8, especially in the afternoon, a lot of that content is very wordy, and all the words is very hard for him to understand. So a lot of the time I will have on my iPad an ASL video about what the teacher might be teaching. Although it's all on the smart board of what all the other students are learning, I will show him a video, and on that video I will put like closed caption so he can read it and visually see as well, so he can understand a little bit more. And sometimes if time allows, I will take him to one side afterwards and just see how much he understood out of that, and then go over it again, just before the next lesson. And especially for tests and stuff, like he tries his hardest at science and social studies, but I do feel with all the wordy, it's very hard. But so, no, I think in general he's remarkably smart at every way possible with this.
Well, we could always use some more sign language courses, which I think they're working on, so I've been told. Really, other than that, I think our division is doing a beautiful job at everything they can to make him feel included.
Yeah, maybe if there would be available resources or funding, what do you think would be other possibilities for interventions for deaf students?
For deaf students, yeah. I would need to consult with I did have the coordinators from Winnipeg come out one time. I'm pretty sure that I found them fascinating. They could only visit us once, and I don't know how they schedule their time, but I really see that as being a valuable resource for educational settings, to have them involved and saying, what can we do better here? Like, what resources, that come and observe us as teachers and see what are your recommendations, and then maybe we can start to get some help that way as well, because they're the ones who would have the best idea. Like for me, I wouldn't know where to begin, but to consult with people who are, or even other schools, right, who have had successes, and other programs, what kind of activities are being offered for students who are hard of hearing, to make sure that they can actively participate in everything that's involved and feel really like they're contributing and a part of that community. So that's something I think is a resource right in Manitoba that we could be like accessing more.
I think that just recently you already discovered his voice. Yeah.
Yes, recently, and it was all up to him. Mm-hmm. We have asked him in the past, and he was very apprehensive about speaking. I think, again, just a confidence issue. And I asked him again towards the beginning of 8th grade, and he had made the decision himself that he was ready, and he's been growing with that so amazingly.
So when we talked more about students who have been interacting with Sander earlier in the year, I don't want to take any credit for this, but I was really thinking about how Sander was going to be in the community as an adult, how he was going to interact in the community. And I really had a bit of a fear that if somebody bumped into him or something, that because he doesn't really, at the time, he didn't speak much, that it was like, you know, that he would be in a really sticky situation. And so from that, we've actually asked Sander and his family if he would be interested in doing speech therapy in order to develop his voice and use his voice. And he agreed to it, and he was excited to do that. And at one point, after he had went to a couple speech therapy lessons, he actually came to our class and said that he was going to use his voice, and everyone in the class was like, jaw dropped, like jaw on the floor. Everyone was amazed. Everyone was so happy for him. A younger boy sitting next to him, who was a close friend of his, he started tearing up. Like everyone in the class was like almost in tears. We were just so happy and so like ecstatic and overjoyed about him, you know, exploring that avenue and taking on that, because we all knew that, you know, that was a really big step for him, and a really big, yeah, it would be just a huge step for everybody. And my class was so accepting towards it. And I think even the whole school, he's even come on Tiger TV and used his voice, and the whole school has just reacted so positively, and everyone is just so happy to see him and know that he is, you know, finding that confidence and using his voice.
After having Sander in the classroom, it was like, I thought that if there was ever an international language for every person, that signing would be a really good one. So if you're ever planted in the middle of anywhere, because I think we naturally speak with our hands, that if we learn the basics of ASL everywhere, it would be kind of a nice stepping stone. I know it's idealistic, but it'd be cool.
The reality that this is normal, and it's normal, this is how Xander has to communicate every day, and the more of us that can learn all this, it makes him feel more integrated in the school. So I personally really, although I found it a challenge at first, I really enjoyed every step of it. And yes.
What are your maybe learnings or realizations after having a deaf student in your class?
That it is like, I guess my big realization was Sander is every other child in his own unique way. There is no, I don't like to call it a disability. I find a disability is has a negative. It is an ability. It's actually something that he will strive. He will develop other senses stronger than I would, or my children, my own children would, because his body is learning that in a different way. And it opened my eyes to say that the sky's the limit. I saw what Sander was doing, and it was very new, right? The fact that he was like learning words and learning a language and becoming more comfortable. Some of it is for Sander too, right? To be in the environment and to have an environment of trust where he knows with his classmates and with his teachers that he can you know, keep pushing himself as well to try and keep growing and keep communicating, and that his classmates will also do the same for him and his teachers. Also just having more people exposed. And another really neat thing that happened when Sander was in grade 5, and when I knew I was going to be talking to you today, I was remembering I had read an article about a soccer referee in the east coast of Canada, and he was hard of hearing, he couldn't hear, and he hit the newspapers as being out there refereeing games, being a person in the deaf community. And I thought, this is so interesting. And so I saved the newspaper article, I brought it to school, and we looked at it as a whole group of grade 5s, like look at what is possible. And there were different things, and I can't quite remember, but there was a vibration tool that was used, and there was something else that was used for communication. But what we did then is Sander wrote a letter to this man, along with his assistant, Miss DeWitt, and Mrs. Rogers at the time, and he responded to Sander, and he spoke about like anything is possible, like look at me. And he was in fact published in his area as having a student reach out to him and being an inspiration to the community who's hard of hearing. So that was lovely. I think we need to search out more stories. Like they're, in the world we live in right now, like we're becoming a kinder, hopefully a kinder place and a more understanding and a more curious place, and I want that to continue.